It was a scene that when we were shooting it, and I watched them shoot it,
trailers.
I had
Visita
no
mi
idea
canal.
to the extent to which it would be so moving in the film. And interesting enough, one of the few comments we had from UA at the time was to cut it. But that's not unusual. You get that all the time.
Oh. Hey, what are you doing? Joey.
The relationship on the end of the movie between Bob and I came out that way because Marty didn't let us see each other for a while. Before we shot the scene, he wouldn't let us talk about it or anything. And Robert and I were such good friends and close friends that it really hurt me to see him begging for forgiveness.
Yeah, boy, come on. Kiss me, huh? Give me a kiss, come on. Wait, let me call my wife and kids. Don't you want them to see the kids? I'm gonna forgive or forget.
And I remember before the scene, Robert told me that. He said, a lot of actors would love to be in that position and can't wait to cry. He said, fight it, which was really helpful.
That scene when Bob goes over and forces Joe to hug him and keeps hugging him is just a brilliant moment. And by the way, shot mostly from the back of De Niro's head because it just worked out that way when they were shooting, but you feel the emotion tremendously. Beautifully acted and very simple scene and crucial to the end of the movie.
You don't want to do this here. Come on. Let me call you. We'll get together in a couple of days. You call me? I will. I forget.
Originally, Schrader had had the idea that Jake would constantly comment on his younger life in older scenes in the nightclub, and he had written it that way. And we're supposed to continue on throughout the movie, intercutting him, old and fat, talking about himself.
We had a screening, and we all were very depressed. We didn't feel the film was really working. And I flew back to L.A., and the next morning I got a call from Marty and said, I think I solved it. Why don't you come back? And I flew back, and he had solved it, and then he made the film work by making some very, very specific changes.
When we saw the first rough cut, Marty and I, we just went and looked at it together, and we knew that we didn't need those flashbacks, that the story was so strong that we could just bookend the movie just with the two sequences of him rehearsing to go out on stage, and it would be fine. We didn't need the other scenes, so we just ripped them out, and it worked perfectly.
We had the speech he recited in the original script from Shakespeare, and so he took Michael Powell down to Hong Fat. Hong Fat is a great noodle restaurant down in Chinatown. And one night, myself and Bob De Niro. And this was during that period, too, where I still wasn't totally committed to it. This is Schrader's first rep. And he said, the ending's all wrong. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the character reciting Shakespeare is just not right. And we thought about that.
A horse. My kingdom for a horse. I haven't had a winner in 6 months.
We talked, well, we better seriously consider On the Waterfront. We were discussing it, and it came up that it was more our iconography than... for better or for worse, are not necessarily Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe and Ben Jonson. It just happens to be is more our iconography, being American, with our education and our background. This is where we come from. And so we surrendered to it and said, okay, let's do it.
Some people aren't that lucky. Like the one that Marlon Brando played in On the Waterfront.
My feeling was that it would have to be unemotional, as flat as possible. But as we started to do it, he said, can I try this and can I try that? And I think we did about 18 or 19 takes until he had worked his process all the way through as an actor. And this is one of the key things about making the pictures we made together, from Raging Bull to King of Comedy. You know, the way I worked with him, he would always tell me, listen, as long as we try things, but you're the guy in the final analysis, if you don't like it, it doesn't go in. That's the way it is. And he always kept his word that way, which made it very comfortable to work together.
I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it. It was you, Charlie.
And of course, Marty is playing a stagehand who comes in and says,
How you doing, Jake? Everything all right?
Yeah.
Ready?
You got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Need anything?
Nah.
and the sort of tired, jaded way Marty does that, and the little feeling of him in that final scene is great.
A lot of people out there.
Yeah, it's crowded.
Before the film finished, one of the great mentors in my life, Haig Manoogian, who was my professor at NYU, the Armenian American, died of a heart attack. And he was a tough teacher, and we didn't always agree on everything, and he was one of the co-producers of my first feature, too, who's at Knocking.
He was wonderful. And Marty wanted to show Haig that he... I'm sorry. Just give me a minute, I'll be fine. I don't know. I didn't expect that to hit me like that. I think Marty wanted to show Haig that finally Marty felt he had made a film that justified everything that he had often argued about in this wonderful way with Haig.
And
so it was very upsetting to us when we've heard that Haig had died just as the film was being finished. And because of that, Marty decided to put the Bible verse at the end of the film and dedicate it to Haig. The loss was very big for both of us.
Through making the film, through Bob, who saw something through Jake, through this character, the real Jake, the real Jake became a character through Bob and Paul and Mark and myself and everybody. Through that journey, I was able to see something that I hadn't seen in myself, really. It also meant Haig, too, because he was able to make me see, in a sense, to be able to actually put what was in here and here onto film. That was the work I was doing. It was on film. Can't help it. That's all it was. You know, it was not canvas. It was not a play. It was not a book. I don't know. It was on film. And so it was a personal thing, purely personal. I did not mean it to mean Jake LaMotta as a character. It was more about Haig, and it was more about the process of what making the film about this quote-unquote Jake LaMotta. Not the real Jake, but the Jake that somehow comes out of the film and is perceived differently by different people over the years. You make up who Jake is in the movie. I don't know, you know? And so that's what it meant. I didn't think anybody was really going to see the picture.
We knew the violence in the film was going to be disturbing to some people, but it had to be a theme in a boxer's life. I mean, Marty is not a great supporter of boxing, and one of the things he wanted to show in this movie is what a brutal and terrifying sport it is. And so he had to lay that down very firmly.
There are probably things that people who've never gone to a fight have never seen or witnessed, so it was nice to put that stuff in there and show them. I mean, he might have exaggerated it sometime, but listen, that's what it's about, to give the feel and to show people, and the best way you can.
And he had to lay down Jake's own personal violence very firmly, but I think he did it appropriately.
You hear what I said? You don't ever have any disrespect for me. You hear what I said?
I always feel that people are much more complex, obviously, and to be drawn in simple terms is not the way there are good sides and bad sides and so-so sides and this and that to everybody. And to me, that was more interesting.
Why don't you stop that, huh? Stop it!
Shut up! Shut up! I'll fucking take care of you later! Shut up!
During the rough cuts, we implied certain special sound effects and that sort of thing, but they weren't satisfying. They were just too literal. When Frank Warner came on, he did Taxi Driver. And Frank started working with each scene with me. And somehow it all came together and really was quite strong. But I don't know what he did. Sometimes he didn't tell us. He just said, no, this is interesting. There's a different sound. I don't know how he got them.
At that time, I had one of the largest libraries in the independent field, about 1 million feet of film. And I had it on quarter-inch reels. And I was working out of my own library with these things, and I'd variable speed them by hand, forward and reverse and things like that, trying for just little snippets here and there. But then the mistakes, the slips in the hands, were the things that were most beautiful. They were gems when it slips in your hand. But that's the way I worked on every picture. I go through the film, I look at it, and I have books in my library, and I go through it. It takes me about a week to go through them.
Incredible it was. He came up with very simple ideas for the film. One of them was a drum. Sometimes it's distorted, or it's just hit simply. Where he decided to put it was, I mean, I could never have imagined thinking of doing that, but then he had sounds of animals that he used during the fight sequences. For example, you see Jake come in to hit his opponent and you'll hear an elephant bray. Or when he knocks Sugar Ray down to the ground, you'll hear a horse shudder.
I use a lot of animal sounds, howling and screaming, all different kinds. And then by controlling the speed and the direction of the sound, made something quite different. And a great sound I had to back up screams with was dry ice on glass. Take a pane of glass and that horrible screech it was.
173 3/4 pounds.
I think that what Frank was trying to do was give an almost machine gun-like feeling sometimes to the flashbulb sounds that are impinging on Jake's life. It's very, very specific. It's very isolated. It's very unique. I've never heard it again.
I sounded those flashbulbs with more than just a bulb. There were 5 or 6 sounds in there working for each one of those flashes. And Marty asked me how I did that. I said, I won't tell you. And he got a little upset. And I said, if I told you, all the magic would be gone.
At one point, though, you know, we've used every possible different tone, and he said, what about taking the sound out? I said, perfect.
I felt within myself, and I still do, the richest sound that I had to offer was nothing.
And I think you know both the boys.
The best thing that Frank Warner taught us was the use of silence. And when we were mixing the movie, there were a couple of key times when he said, look, it'll be much more powerful if we take the sound away and then bring it back in, instead of what you would think you would want to do, which was to raise the sound at an incredibly emotional moment. And he was so right, and it's something that Marty and I have never forgotten and have used again in other films. The moment that was most telling was when Jake is in the midst of this terrible beating he took from Sugar Ray, and Sugar Ray just can't understand why LaMotta won't go down, and he pulls back, and the lights changed, dimmed in the ring, and we took all the sound away. There's just a very, very slight sound that Frank put in, and as Sugar Ray comes back in for the kill, the sound all comes back in again, and it works like crazy. Frank was so right. I had heard from Frank's assistants that he always burned all of his sound effects at the end of every film, and I thought, oh, that must be so other people won't use them. But I found out it wasn't for that reason. It was so he didn't use them again. So that every time he began a new movie, he began it completely fresh, and he had to come up with a concept for it.
Particularly on a big picture that had been created, like Raging Bull or Close Encounters, my feeling was the producer owned that. I didn't own it. I did that for him and the director. And so I would go out and I ruined it. I just destroyed everything. I couldn't use it anymore. If I had to do it over, I'd have to recreate it all over again. It sounds maybe kind of foolish, but I didn't think so. I still don't. You know, I thought enough about these people that I wanted, if I did anything to their liking, I wanted it to be theirs.
Music was an enjoyable thing. In the 2.5 rooms, 3 rooms I lived in with my mother and father and brother, I played music at a certain time, and especially when they weren't home, it was great. So I could just play whatever I wanted, besides rock and roll. In any event, my uncles had given me an old 10-inch LP, small LP, on intermezzi, operatic intermezzos, you know. And one of them was Caballero Staccato. I didn't know what it was, but I happened to like that one. It became something I would listen to in the midst of other types of music. And sort of imagine things to it. And so I said, I always had a problem with certain kinds of film scoring. It isn't for me. I mean, my movies, the scores are pretty much compiled by me with songs that I know. And so I realized that if there were to be any score, it could be this music from Mascagni, and that would be the theme.
There are 3 different pieces that are used throughout the film in a very special way, beginning with the opening title sequence, and it just sets the mood for the entire film.
The actual placing of that on the first shot was almost an accident to a certain extent. And it came up, and Erwin Winkler and Thelma telling me, take a look at this, that's interesting. And we had put it, I said, yeah, we ran it. And something happened. And at first I said, is it too... I said, no, let's leave it, let's leave it. Let's leave it.
Come on, give me a Coke.
Then throughout the rest of the film, he was using pieces from the 40s that would be heard on radios or again through tenement windows. Marty has a genius for putting music to film. He has carried around in his head sometimes for years pieces of music that he's wanted to use in a film and then eventually finds just the right spot for it.
Any girl like a kiss like that can drink at my joint anytime. What about you? How old are you?
The mixing of the film really was quite a chore. It was almost as intricate as the fight scenes. In fact, the dramatic scenes were hard to do, but they were almost a vacation compared to the fight scenes and the mix.
Well, we had no schedule when we came to mixing the film. It was probably the longest mix I've ever been involved with. We were on the stage for months and months and months and months. From 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. Marty had a trailer pulled up to the back door of the soundstage where he basically slept. And one night, I said to Marty, we're going to open Friday in New York and Los Angeles and Toronto, and we have to get a print up to Toronto by Thursday to get it shown to the censors up there. So we basically have to finish Sunday night so we can get into the lab. He said, fine. And I said, we're going to wrap at midnight. That's going to be it. Well, at midnight, I said, okay, Marty, we're going to wrap. And he said, oh, no, we're doing the scene in the Copa. And Marty says, I can't hear him say cutty sauce.
Cutty sauce and water, huh?
And I said, you're right. Nobody could hear him. We've been here for months and months and months, 7 days a week. It's Sunday night. The guys are falling asleep at the mixing board. I can't hear anything. You can't hear anything. But it's going to be, and that's it. We're going to wrap. And he got very upset. He said, well, in that case, take my name off the film. It's no longer a Marty Scorsese film.
And he meant it at the moment. He really did. That's how much he cared about every single inch of that movie.
I said, fine, okay, it's no Raging Bull is no longer a Marty Scorsese film. And we wrapped. We wrapped that night. As it turned out, Marty and I took a print to New York. And our first screening of the film, Marty and I were standing in the back, and the film goes on, and it was the worst sound you had ever heard. And I ran over to the theater manager and I said, what's wrong with your sound system here? He said, what's wrong? He said, I just went to Radio Shack and I bought 4 new speakers at $59.95. And you're complaining about the sound? So there you go. And by the way, he took back his declaration that Raging Bull is no longer a Marty Scorsese film.
Go get him, champ.
I knew we had a great movie, but I didn't know until I saw it in its totality just what we really did have. And I just remember going up to both of them saying, congratulations, you're going to win the Oscar. And of course I was half right, but it was clear that this was a very special movie.
But I remember that Marty and I read the first review, and it basically said, I hope my memory is correct, don't distribute this movie. No one will come and see it.
I didn't think anybody was really going to see the picture that much, but I don't think they did.
There was some disappointment in the business of the picture, but ultimately UA got its money back, and nobody ever regretted making the picture.
And then it actually, I was very surprised, it got some Academy Award nominations. It was the first nomination I got as Best Director.
It was very nice. I guess it means that maybe I was pretty good on a certain day of my life, right? So that means a lot to me.
I'm very proud to be nominated. It's wonderful to be nominated. I didn't win, so I don't know if it's wonderful to win. Poor, much sadder is that Marty didn't win. Isn't that ridiculous?
And it took almost a decade for it to really be recognized, and then it was, wonderfully. It was called the Best Film of the Decade, which was great when that happened.
It was really very good for me. I liked it a lot because it was meant that the film was remembered, you know, and remember that I was still alive to see that.
It's just that when he gets something on his mind, you know, he's got a hard head, he likes to do things his own way. I mean, Jesus Christ could come off the cross sometimes. He don't give a fuck. He's going to do what he wants to do. He wants to make it on his own, you know?
Never went down, Ray. He never got me down, Ray.
It was such an amazing experience to be thrust into something that powerful and in an environment that I didn't know and was ill at ease in, and then have it be so rewarding.
I didn't say anything. I'm just telling you, Joey's right.
They gave me a wonderful opportunity in my life, and I got to prove something. And I got to step up to the plate, and obviously I was okay. So I thank them for that.
It's a sick question. You're a sick fuck, and I'm not that sick that I'm going to answer. I'm not telling you anything.
The effect Raging Bull had on my career is just, I mean, what's to talk about?
I've done a lot of bad things, Joey. Maybe it's coming back to me.
We were expressing through Jake's character what we feel about his character, about life, about everything. Obviously, that's what it is.
Working on the picture and pulling myself through this journey, in which I didn't want to be involved with at first, made it possible for me to learn a little.
Let's hear for the great Jake LaMotta, ladies and gentlemen.
When it came out, it was down the block here, the movie, 2 blocks from here, in my neighborhood, right here where I live now. And I went there with my ex-wife, Vicky. And we went there, we watched the movie. And when I saw the movie, I was kind of depressed. I said, was I really like that? You know, she said to me, you were worse.
It was just a stunning film from the first day of dailies. You know, you were just sort of knocked off your feet by what was happening. The film is just sort of burned into the screen. It's got such intensity, such obviously very personal significance for Marty at that point in his life, and for De Niro, of course, just a magnificent performance. So brilliant camera work. I mean, it was quite something.
I think there's various elements to it that make it this kind of this great of modern cinema. In terms of creativity and filmmaking, you know, it's stunning. It's an unbelievable way of translating a story into a screen. It's virtually second to none.
Raging Bull was, without doubt, one of the best films of the 80s, and it was given by the American critics the award for the best film of the 80s. But at the time when it came out, the reviews were very uneven.
People didn't really know what to make of it. I remember when we were in the laboratory trying to rush some prints out, and we read the first reviews in Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, and they were extremely bad, and they said they warned distributors not to book the film. I can tell you that was not a good day for us.
Nobody thought at the time that it was likely to be a classic. It runs counter to everything Hollywood now does. It's not a feel-good movie.
It's fascinating because you're forced to sympathise with someone who is hateful in every way. The kind of person you would never want anything to do with, or anyone you ever cared about to have anything to do with. You're forced to to care about his circumstances and his decline.
The Lower East Side, it was the slums of Manhattan. It was the poor section, but I never realized I was poor. I had a lot of fun when I was a kid. Robbing, stealing, taking money, doing things like that. You know, the kid stuff. And I thought everybody was like that. I thought everybody was doing the same thing, because everybody was doing the same thing. Because Scorsese came from that neighborhood also. We knew exactly what it was all about.
Scorsese is comfortable with New York, and with New York people, and with the whole New York ambience. De Niro pushed Raging Bull because it was a wonderful part to undertake, a very, very difficult and challenging part. And at that stage in his career, that's exactly what he wanted.
He asked somebody to mail him a paperback in Sicily. He was doing Godfather 2. And he read the script there, and he was obsessed with the story, and he wanted to do it. And the dedication he put into this movie, I can't explain it. He was obsessed with the movie and everything, with me, with the people I was involved with.
Scorsese was very doubtful about making the film in the first place. I think he went through a very bad time personally, with a breakup of a marriage, and he had to be persuaded by De Niro to make the film. The disaster that his life was in persuaded him that the disaster of Jake LaMotta's life was actually worth filming.
In Scorsese's approach, he definitely wanted to make the boxing the kind of fundamental point, the hook around which the psychodrama spins. Scorsese was determined that the boxing was going to be real. It was going to be absolutely what it's like to be in a ring. He wanted to put the audience in the ring with LaMotta, And one of the great unsung heroes of most of Scorsese's movies is Thelma Schoonmaker, who's an absolutely amazing editor. And she was cutting, you know, immensely detailed sequences.
De Niro trained with me for 1 solid year before we shot one foot of film. And in that time, I boxed over 1,000 rounds with him. I'm not exaggerating at all, over 1,000 rounds. And when I got done training him, I'm very certain, I'm very positive he could have fought professional.
One of the things that Scorsese did when he was designing the film was to decide to make each fight different from the other in terms of style. So it would all depend on what the state of Jake LaMotta's mind was at the time that he was fighting the fight. Here, for example, you'll see that the ring is extremely wide and bright and free and open. And that's because this is the first fight where he knocked down Sugar Ray Robinson, who was a great fighter, a great champion, and LaMotta's great rival. To give you a stark contrast to that, a fight that LaMotta lost on a decision is done in a completely different way. Now, this is a fight, again, against Sugar Ray Robinson, but which LaMotta lost on a technicality, and he felt that he had fought a terrific fight. So he was extremely upset about the fact that he had lost. So Scorsese designed the entire fight as if it was in a pit of hell. Now you'll see here that every shot is shot through a camera lens that has flames beneath the camera. And these flames are causing a mirage-like rippling effect in the way the image looks, and lots of smoke, so that everything is kind of indistinct, unfocused, which is the way Jake LaMotta remembered the fight in his mind, because he didn't feel that he deserved to lose it. Begins with the camera descending into a dark, smoky ring. Every shot has this feeling of being not quite there. Sometimes the faces are out of frame. Here the referee is very blurred. When LaMotta goes back to his corner, I'll just run down to that. He goes back to his corner and sits down, you'll see that you can't even see his face. His face is obscured by the rope. Again, contributing to this feeling that he doesn't quite understand what's going on.
And Robinson is down for the second time in his career. He was down in the last fight too. Watch his sugar.
One particular fight, I'm fighting another Frenchman by the name of Laurent Tuile. And with 23 seconds left of the 15th round, I could not win the fight.